How's it going, everybody? In this video, I'd like to walk you through exactly how it is that I went through the process of taking ESXi, VMware ESXi, installing it on my server here at home, and then being able to integrate different operating systems and things into it. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how I did that and some of the steps that you can do to get it to work for you. I know a lot of people they struggle with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to show you VMware, and this is my ESXi server. So as you can see, I do have it up and running, and I have a few boxes spun up and ready to roll. Currently, the way that I actually have it set up is we have several CSR 1000 Vs. Now this is a free router, for lack of a better term. It's actually what it is. It's CSR stands for Cloud Services Router, and basically you're able to download this free of charge from Cisco's website as an evaluation copy. You download it, you install it on your computer in ESX or VMware Workstation, and you're able to use all the features of iOS XE. This is an iOS XE platform, therefore it's going to have a little bit beefier operating system that would normally be available to most people. So I'm going to walk you through some of the steps that you need to do in order to get this up and running. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the actual ESXi host itself. So you need to go and manipulate things to get it to work. So the very first thing you need to do is you actually you have to go to configuration, and we're going to click on networking. You have to enable the VM network to be able to pass all VLANs. Now 4095 means it's going to pass every VLAN. Now how do you get to there? Well, it's actually very simple. You click on Add Networking, and then you would click on VM Kernel, you would click Next, and then you would specify the network you wanted to work on, and then you would simply click on Next, and then right here where it says VM Kernel, where it says VLAN ID, you would click this, and then click Next, and that's pretty much all you have to do. I'm not going to finish it up because it's what I've already done. The other thing that I went to is I went to the properties of the actual switch. Click on properties here. You go to network adapters. You click on edit. Ports, and you click on vSwitch, and you go edit, and you go to security, and you click on promiscuous mode. That means every switch or every router will be able to talk with every other router. That's what enables you to be able to ping and form neighbor adjacencies with routing and things like that. So you do that, and click close on that. Next thing we want to do is we want to go over and we want to bring in a operating system. So I've already got a bunch of them here. I recommend using the OVA or the Open Virtualization Archive file. So once you download this from Cisco's website, you simply click on File, Deploy OVF Template, and it's going to pop up one for me automatically because I've already done this quite a few times. So I've got a few of them that I've done. So I usually click on this guy right here. Make sure it's the one you want. Now, if you did not know this, if you click on here and you see right here where it says 3.11.01s 15.4.1s standard, what that means is you're going to be looking at it. This is the iOS XE release right here. This back half is actually the iOS equivalency. So 3.11 is the equivalency of 15.4. So it's a brand new code. So we're going to click Next. This is what we're going to. The download size is 267 meg. If you size on disk, is going to be 548 or 546 megabytes if it's thin provisioned, or 8.3 gigabytes if it's thick provisioned. I choose thin provisioning. It's easier to work with. You click on Next. I name it CSR 8 because I'm going to eventually have 10 of these guys rolling. You click Next. You tell the data store you want to apply it to. Click Next. I click on Thin Provision. Click on Next. Don't worry about this because regardless of how you do it, we're only going to be using Gigabit Ethernet 1, and I'll show you how that works once we get it all set up. You click on Next here, and this is just an overview. And you click on Finish. Now it's going to download the disk. It doesn't take long at all. 30 to 45 seconds is usually about the average time. As you can see right here, it actually added it right here. So all these are going to be on the same network. Okay, so we're going to be able to do whatever we need to get this up and running. So we do that, and as soon as it's done working, which should be here in just a moment, and as you can see, it's actually pretty quick. You click close on that, then you come over here to CSR8. You click on it. Then you go down to Edit Virtual Machine Settings, and then from here, it by default starts off at 2.5 gig. I knock it down to 2 gig. I give it a additional CPU, and then I come down to I add up here at the top. I click on Add. I click on Serial Port. Next, you say Connect via Network, and then you click on when it says Network Backing. You say Server. VM listens for connection. Then you type the port URI. This is going to be telnet // the IP address of the server, whatever it might be, colon, and then the IP address or the port number you're going to be telling it to listen for. So you're going to point your VM or your PuTTY or your secure CRT or your TerraTerm sessions to this port number on this IP address. You click on Next, click on Finish, and that's all you have to do. You click OK, and that is it. Now I'm not going to deploy this one. I'm actually going to come up here to 4, which already has all of this stuff done. We're going to click on Edit Virtual Machine Settings. We have this. I didn't add that extra CPU core. It really doesn't make a difference. And then I have this right here, situated. So we're going to click OK on that. We're going to click Power On. Then we're going to click on Console. Double click in there until you get the little spinny thing. Now it's telling us grub loading stage 2. That's fine. It's going to do 10 of these. So let it do its thing, and then from there, it should go to the drop-down menu is to choose what image to file or which way to connect to it. And if it doesn't do that, that's okay. What I'm going to do now, actually, is I'm going to bring over my Super PuTTY session, and I've actually got CSR up and working already. So right here, we're on Super PuTTY, and we're going to do a show ver include iOS, and we're running right here 15.4 Advanced Enterprise Services is what we're running. Alright, so it's doing its thing back here. So we're actually going to click right here on R4, and we're going to say, I'm going to hit enter. It's going to, because the previous session died, so that's fine. We're going to right click on here, we're going to go down to restart session, and it's going to start loading up the operating system. Now you might be asking, how do you get this operation to get it tabbed? Well, Super PuTTY, it's really simple. It actually, when I installed GNS3 8.6, this is actually how it actually came. So I have my ESXi rack, this is the ESXi rack. You right click, or if you wanted to create a new subfolder like this, you would right click on here, click on new folder. Once you have your folder created, and you're going to create a bunch of subfolders. You're going to right click on here and click on new. Then you're going to type in the session name, which is going to be R8. Type in the IP address of the server, 192.168.1.200. You're going to click on Telnet first, then the port number, 2308. You're going to click on Save. That's going to add the port number. And then what you're going to do is, once you spin it up, you're going to right click and you're going to connect. But we're not going to connect right now because obviously the router itself isn't up. So right now, this guy's installing, and he's up and running. It does take a little bit of time for it to initially install. Once it goes through its install process, which is actually really, really easy, I'm actually going to show you how this works actually right now. I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to click on this guy, and we're going to click on Power on the virtual machine. I'm going to come back to the console. It just kind of helps me do it the first time here. We're going to click in it, go down to Serial Console, click Enter. I'm going to Control Alt to break out of it. Then I'm going to come back over here to Super PuTTY, and we're going to right click on here, and we're going to click Connect. It should work. And it looks like it might. So right now, as it's starting to boot up here, you should see the line starting to pop up here, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. Hopefully, and if it doesn't bug out or fail by this time, it should be operational. And you might be asking, why are you going through so much effort when you could just do this in GNS3? Well, that's actually a really good question. I'm glad you asked. The reason I'm doing it this way is because the fact of GNS3, the highest iOS image that I can find online is 15.2 Advanced Enterprise Services for the 7200 series router. That's not quite going to do it for me for CCIE version 5. So the best way for me to do it was to come here and download, and here's R8 firing up, was to download the iOS image for iOS XE for CSR and go through the process of installing it. And go through the process, get everything up and running. And it does take a few minutes for this to go. Even though it's got 2 gig of RAM, I'm looking at probably a fair amount of RAM when it's actually up and running and everything is going, because of the fact that it is a pretty resource-intensive box. But the nice thing about it is, it's the latest iOS image, 15.4. Now, the only caveat is if you were to go download the latest and greatest, 3.12. If you download and install 3.12 iOS XE or CSR 1000V, that comes down as a different virtual machine version with VMware. So you have to be careful with that one, because once you download and get it fired up and it creates a virtual machine like it did over here, what will end up happening is you won't be able to go back in and modify anything. Because of the fact that I'm in ESXi 5.5 evaluation copy, I have to be able to go in through VMware vCenter server, and I have to go through the web client in order for any of this to work. So the best thing for you and I to do is just to keep it simple with 3.11. You don't have to worry about that because it's on a VMware version 8, I believe, is what it does. So as you can see, it's firing up the server. Everything looks good, and eventually it will get done booting. Now, I'm going to whiteboard real quick just to give you an idea of exactly how this is working. All right, so because some people, they don't understand the logic behind it, and I want to try to demystify that while I'm sitting here talking to you and you're listening. So the idea is actually really, really simple. Where'd my... Oh, did I unplug? Yeah, I did unplug my pen pad here. Let me plug this guy back in. I was wondering why it wasn't responding. Alright, so give that a minute to fire up. Alright, so basically the way that it works is we have my Dell server. It's not quite this big, but we're going to run with it. It's running ESXi 5.5. Wow, that's really, really choppy. There is a dot right here, by the way. So that's what it's running behind the scenes. We have CSR. Hang on one second for me. So we have this guy's still installing the image in the background here. So what I'm going to do is pause the video to see why my computer's running so hard, if it's something that I did or if it's just the fact of, it is what it is. Alright, so we have, let me erase this out of here real quick. We have CSR 1KV. And basically what's going on right now is on this entire box, I have times 8 of these, and it's supposed to be an X. And at the same time, I also have Windows 7, and I have GNS3 installed underneath that. GNS3. Wow, that's really buggy right now, bothering me. So we have that installed on the box. Now what's basically happening is I'm using Super Putty from my machine, and I am telnetting from here over here through my local network. So what I'm doing, oh, I forgot to mention something to you. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so this guy is up and running, and we come over here to Super Putty, and here we are at the configuration dialog. So we hit no, enter. It's going to go back through. I think it's going to reboot one more time. It does take a few minutes for it to load up, but as you're sitting here watching it, that was like 7 or 8 minutes from the start to finish. So it's actually pretty quick in reality. So I'll bring this across, and you can see that's basically how you get it up and running. It's pretty straightforward. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to this guy. I'm going to click on this. One other thing that you need to do, and I apologize for not mentioning this earlier, from the configuration tab of the host, click on security profile. You're going to click on firewall properties here at the bottom half. You're going to scroll down till you find VMware serial port connection over network. You click on that, you click OK. That is what's going to enable you to do the telnet to the box. So if you don't do that, the firewall on ESX is going to block you by default. So now what I'm doing is I'm telnetting from here across, and that gives me the ability to pull up Super Putty and tab out, 1 and 2 and so on and so forth, and do all that good stuff. So that's basically what's going on from behind the scenes. Now, you might be wondering, how do you get several routers that are in ESX to talk to each other? So basically, from a logical standpoint, actually let's do it this way. From a logical standpoint, this is actually what's happening. We have all the routers. So right now I've got 5 of them loaded up. All these routers are connected to a virtual switch inside of ESX. What actually ends up happening is this switch right here is permitting all 4,000, that's pathetic, VLANs. Well, I don't know why my thing is bugging out on me like that, but and what I'm basically doing is I turn the physical interface. I'm going to have to stop. I'll just explain it. I turn the physical interface here on. I turn that interface on. Then I go and I create a bunch of sub interfaces. Because at that point, when you create a bunch of sub interfaces, you're able to go through and you're able to enable the encapsulation .1q and then the VLAN number. That puts a .1q tag here. Then he knows to forward that to wherever it's got to go. So example would be, bring up this guy. Let's go full screen with it and hit enter, and now he's enabled. So we're going to go enable some basic bootstrapping line, console 0, no exec dash timeout, 0 space 0, logging synchronous, or anyway, come back over here to R1, for instance, config T, and we're going to go to do show IP interface brief. And as you can see right here, we have this IP address right here. We're going to go to R2 as well, show IP interface brief, and we're going to go to config T, interface gig 1, and type in no shut. Bring up the interface. At this point, the interface will come up here in a moment. Alright, there it goes. Line protocol is up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to type in exit. We're going to go interface gig 1.100. Enter. Encapsulation .1q 100. IP address is going to be 10.1.100.2 because router 1 is .1. And we're going to go to router 2. We're going to 24-bit mask. And we're going to actually exit out of here, end out, and we're going to do a ping to 10.1.100.1. So it should go through. It'll ARP, and there we go. So we're able to ping. If I wanted to telnet to 10.1.100.1, it'll let me open it, but there's no password there, so I do have connectivity. The way that that's working, like I said, is when you specify sub interfaces, you are telling it to send traffic this way. Traffic is then forwarded up here based on the tag that you're going to be using. So you can have a network diagram that looks an awful lot like this. You can have a network diagram that looks an awful lot like this. And if you notice, they're all sub-interfaces. All sub-interfaces right here. .145. So you can configure all of your boxes to look like this, and then go in and simply create the routes through this. The .1q tags is what actually keeps everything separated. And this is a great thing because it allows you to do whatever you need to do for your studies. It's 15.4 code, so if you're studying for CCIE like I am, it's a great first step to get everything up and running. So, last thing I want to show you is iOS XR. Let's bring this guy back up here. GNS3 is now shut off, so we're going to click on this guy. We're going to go to resource allocation, or I'm sorry, summary. Right now we're using 12 gig out of my 24 gig of RAM. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to right click on it, I'm going to power on. He takes 3 gigs of RAM. He's a bit bigger. So we're going to click on console, we're going to click iOS XRV, and it's booting it. So now what we have to do, if we right click on here, we go down to edit settings. I want to make sure I have the right port number. So 2401. So if I come back over to here, and I right click on this guy, I click on new, and I type in XR1, and then I type in 192.168.1.200, click on Telnet, and click on 2401, click on Save. So when I'm studying for service provider, I'll be able to do the exact same thing. You right click on, you click Connect. This worked earlier. I didn't try it in Super Putty, I tried it separately. And this one takes a little while to bring up because it's supposed to be on a much beefier setup than other routers, but this will give you the flexibility and the of doing everything from iOS XR, which is going to be very similar to what you'd see in a service provider network. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pause the video, and I will wait for this to load, and then once it loads, I'll be able to show you guys how this actually works behind the scenes and how to set it up and stuff like that. So, be right back. Welcome back, folks. What you see on your screen right now is iOS XR. And what iOS XR is, it's the service provider version of iOS. It allows you to do a lot. It's kind of hard to sum it up into one thing. I'm trying to figure out a good word to use. But basically, this is what you would see if you were to take the service provider exam, the CCIE service provider specifically. So, a couple things about this. When you first fire it up, now I've already installed this box, so I was able to just log in and go about my day. When you first set it up, anything that you would normally use for a username and password has already been taken. Cisco, password, that type of stuff. Come up with a unique username, and then password. I'm using Cisco for mine. It doesn't really make a difference. So then what you can do is you can go in and go to config T. It's still got the same command structure as normal iOS, except for the way that it does things. So like for instance, if I do show run section line, begin line, I don't know how fast this is. Okay, so let's go line console 0, and we're going to type in no exec timeout 0 space 0. You hit enter. Now if you were to escape, like end or control Z, it's going to say uncommitted changes found. Commit them before exiting, and you have to commit these changes before you do anything. If you don't commit them, then they won't stay. So you're going to click hit yes, and that's going to commit the change. Then you do a show run. Interesting. I've only just begun to play with this, but you can do a lot with iOS XR. So I'm going to use this for when I attack the CCIE service provider exam. I've got two of these guys fired up, so I'm going to eventually just get it working to where I can use GNS3 and this to get everything to work. So it's just a matter of time before I get it where I need it to be. But this is good for practicing on how everything works, and I might actually just incorporate it with CSR 1000V and try to get things to work that way and stuff like that. But we'll see what happens. Go from there. But I just wanted to show you guys how to do that. This is exactly the same thing you did with the CSR 1000Vs. You go in, you add the serial port, you make sure you input permitted through the firewall, things like that. So pretty straightforward. Hope this has been informative for you. I'd like to thank you for viewing.